One of the biggest offenses you can commit against an avid book reader is to take their favorite book and turn it into a less than accurate film. It's almost a trend at this point to rag on film adaptations of books, and the toxicity and negativity is just so prevalent in our culture. This saddens me greatly because I'm one of the people who got into books because of their film adaptations, such as with the Harry Potter series and the Hunger Games trilogy. So for this Hunger Games month video, I am going to be listing off my favorite things about the Hunger Games films and what I personally believe they got right. Hey y'all, I'm the Geek Apprentice and welcome to the 3rd annual Hunger Games month. Okay, look, I get it. I truly do. There are seldom few things that are more annoying than film creators taking out crucial plot points and storylines, just tossing them to the wayside as if they mean nothing. I will forever be greatly peeved with the first Hunger Games film and how they removed the way Katniss got the mockingjay pin, removing the character of Madge and thus completely destroying the meaning of the pin, actually kind of leaving it with no meaning whatsoever. It was kind of pointless when you look at it from a film perspective. There was just nothing significant behind it because she just bought it at the haul rather than it being a gift from Madge. But if you've read the books, you know what I'm talking about. But guess what? I still enjoyed the films, and do you want to know why? I'll tell you why. First of all, the films actually did a pretty decent job of creating the world we get in the books, especially when you consider the creative liberties they were forced to take to avoid having narration since the books are entirely from Katniss's point of view. Not every series gets even decent adaptations, but the Hunger Games, and in my opinion the Harry Potter series, as well as the Keira Knightley Pride and Prejudice and the Lord of the Rings trilogy, were made quite well. The second reason I was able to enjoy these films is because one has to recognize that it is impossible to create a perfect movie adaptation. I know people say Lord of the Rings was close, but they took out a lot of stuff too. The experience of reading a story versus watching a story is completely different. Yes, they are both mediums of storytelling, but the consumer experience is completely different. And frankly, some people just don't enjoy reading. I can't explain it, though I used to be one of them. I love trying to imagine the world the author is creating and just essentially being sucked into another realm simply by words on a page. Equally, but differently, I also love experiencing, seeing, and hearing the world with my own eyes and ears. We set ourselves up for disappointment when we walk into that theater demanding it be exactly like the book. It's just not possible. Now that doesn't mean you can't have a certain level of expectation, but you need to alter what kind of expectations they are. Are they unrealistic or are they workable for a film? Because again, the journey to create a story via film versus a book is quite different. It's incredibly foolish how many people out there claim they know how they could have made the perfect film adaptation of books A, B, and C if they had been in charge of it, when none of them have ever even seen a screenplay, let alone written one or even been on a movie set and know anything about film at all. Everybody's a critic, and typically they're uninformed, ignorant ones too. My point being, this perspective allows me to enjoy the first film and what it has to offer despite it being my least favorite of the film adaptations. The same goes for Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. That was also not a very great adaptation, but I can still appreciate it. Anyway, needing to get off my soapbox here, let's get into the video where I will be listing off what I think each of the films individually did right, as well as what I think they did right as a whole. Now do bear in mind that a lot of this probably is just really subjective, and if you're a book purist and kind of closed-minded, you probably won't agree with any of this. But even if you are open-minded, this can really depend on your own experience and your own interpretation of certain scenes and aspects of the series. Just needed to put that out there. Also do note that the list for each individual film is pretty short, kind of for the sake of time. This is already like a 5-page script right now for the video, and most 10-minute videos are like 3 pages, so for the sake of time, and I loved a lot about the films, I just had to make it short as far as individual films were concerned. Now let's get into it. While I may have one big gripe with the first film and a few minor ones, there is still so much good in this book to movie translation. Most of it is general stuff that I'll cover at the end, but there is one moment, specific to this title, that I never cease to be rendered speechless by, and that is the iconic "I Volunteers" tribute scene. When reading this moment in the book, it's kind of quick. This makes sense considering all of the mental gymnastics Katniss' character is having to go through. One moment she's just praying that her name isn't the one that's called, the next she is shouting to take her sister Prim's place. So reading this from the perspective of the person who's going through the chaos would feel super quick paced. In the film, we get to see it all. The name being drawn and called, the shock on Prim's face, the horror on Katniss' face, the struggle for her to get to her sister so suddenly, and the fighting of the peacekeepers as she, without a thought for herself, shouts to take the place of her baby sister. This whole scene was masterfully executed, and I still get chills every time I watch it. Look, trial and error is a thing, okay? And the first film didn't really have a great big budget going in. So going into the second film with a much larger budget thanks to the success of the first film and also having a new director, which made a big difference in a lot of ways, yeah, there were a lot of little aspects that needed to be changed and made a big difference. One of those being PEETA'S overall look. He's described as having ashy blonde hair, but in the first film, they gave him super light locks. But the moment I saw PEETA in Catching Fire, I was relieved to find his look was now more in line with the book. By the same token, Prim's cat Buttercup received a change in casting. In the first, they made him a tuxedo cat, or something black and white, when in the books he was clearly described as being a yucky orange color resembling the thing he's named after. This new cast member had the right coloring, better hair length, and more accurate facial structure. It really is the small things, y'all. Everything about the way the film creators brought the clock arena to life was spectacular. What's crazy is how this is something that's decently easy to picture when reading the book, thereby making it easy to feel like maybe the movie could screw it up because not a lot was left to creative liberties. However, they did a marvelous job creating exactly what we were all imagining and making it seem plausible. I'm also a tad bit biased because I remember the feeling when I too discovered it was a clock while reading. It was just, I was dumbfounded. It was just such a good twist. I love those moments when reading. Thus, seeing this epiphany hit the big screen in such a perfect way was incredible. For whatever reason, I struggled to truly picture how District 13 would look other than it being drab. The concept and structure of it confused me, probably because Katniss was confused and I was reading in her head. That said, the way the filmmakers brought the world of District 13 to life was amazing. It was as if once I saw it, I thought, oh yeah, that's exactly how I'd picture it, even though I couldn't before. Be honest, we all had preconceived ideas for how this melody would sound. And while our own personal interpretations would certainly vary note to note, we'd all probably agree that eeriness was the main key. The music developers hit the nail so hard on the head with this one. The meta song was great, don't get me wrong, but the tune chosen to be the Hanging Tree theme was beyond perfect. The scene itself also deserves massive praise. The way they took a simple melody and turned it into a battle chant for the districts and how they showed off what was happening, I'm truly blown away each and every time. This character development, if you will, could have gone very wrong. Thankfully, between the acting job of Josh Hutcherson, the direction of Francis Lawrence, and the massive input of Suzanne Collins, the author herself, they managed to capture the essence of hijacked PETA with glowing results. Scary glowing results. I knew this is where they would leave off part 1. I knew what was going to happen, but it still could not prepare me for actually seeing it. I remember throwing the book at the wall during this part, and I would have done the same thing in concept with the film considering just how perfectly done it was. As difficult as it was to pull off the initial shock of PETA'S transformation and torture, tougher still was the transitioning into the struggle he was going to experience throughout the final film. The slow descent into madness, the fight to bring out his true self, and to make it all flow naturally into him going back to normal, mostly normal. Old PETA, the way he should be. Seriously, that was hard enough, I imagine, for Suzanne Collins to pen in a way that seemed like it flowed naturally. Bringing it to life was a whole new hurdle, but they tackled it well, in my opinion. Am I the only one who didn't realize Finnick was dead for quite a few pages? I'm serious, at some point after the lizard mutt scene, I just suddenly realized, wait, where's Finnick? He's not there. I had to go back and read carefully to figure out, oh, he was killed. I was distraught and completely caught off guard. That whole sequence just moved so darn quick that I couldn't keep up with who was being killed and how. Again, this makes sense since it was from Katniss's perspective and things were moving pretty quick for her too. In Mockingjay Part 2, they handled this so smoothly. Yes, it was quick and chaotic, but they highlighted the deaths in a way that didn't slow down the madness, but did bombard you with loss and terror and sudden grief. I mean, Cressida's face when Masala got vaporized? Oh my goodness, her reaction was heartbreakingly spot on. Just as spot on as this entire sequence of scenes. For whatever reason, probably because I was still a teenager even though I reread it every single year, I found Katniss's tantrum with Buttercup at the end of the book kind of cringy and silly, at least on that first read through. I just didn't grasp what was happening. The film showed this scene in a new light for me. I'm sure I would have eventually got it, but the film did a fantastic job of showing the built-up anguish lashing out from Katniss. Of course, the stupid cat survived, but he was Prim's cat. So despite how much she hates the reminder, having that moment where she breaks down into tears and actually holds the cat was sobering. I felt bad for cringing upon my first read-through now that I finally understood it. One of the biggest lessons I learned while I was earning my BA in theater from my university was that whether it's a film or a play, or in my case a one-act play, casting is 50% of the work. Your writing, design, vision, or what have you, it all means nothing if your casting is not spot on. And one thing I have to give massive praise for throughout this series is the casting. No, Jennifer Lawrence still bothers me quite a bit, especially some of her acting in the final two films, but she is still a far better choice than some of whom the producers considered. And whatever I may feel about her as a person shouldn't dictate how I feel about her portrayal of Katniss, which was still pretty darn good. Did Woody Harrelson match the description of Haymitch from the books? No, but was he perfect when it came to how they transformed the books into films? Absolutely. And as far as everyone else goes, I wouldn't change a thing. Even if I may have had preconceived ideas of how I thought some characters should look, act, or talk, I still believe as far as film goes, these picks were the best. Making the decision to remove certain storylines, characters, or nuances from a film adaptation of a book is no easy task. We want everything there, but it just can't happen in a film either due to time or clarity. J.K. Rowling actually made a fair point when she was asked about the idea of, well, maybe there was an audience for several hour-long Harry Potter films, like meaning each Harry Potter film being like 6 hours long. And to be sure, there probably is an audience for that. Me. But her response was something along the lines of, yeah, they'd still find something to complain about. It's true, because a movie just isn't a book. It's different. So it's all about keeping the integrity of the story and the main characters while also making it suitable for film. And for the most part, I believe the writers for the Hunger Games series of films did a great job in this area. Yes, I still gripe about the pin in the first film, but other than that, I commend the writers. As an example, sure, I would have loved to have seen Katniss meet Bonnie and Twill and that be how she finds out about District 13 just as it was in the books, but it wasn't integral to the overall story in terms of the movies. I'm not saying it wasn't necessary in the book, it was definitely, everything was necessary in the book. Everything has a reason. But those were books and these are films. And films require a little bit more streamlining when it comes to storyline. So I'm happy with what we got. There were so many moments when after reading the book, I'd first watch the film and say, oh my gosh, that was exactly like the book. The first time for me was in Catching Fire when Katniss is waking up Haymitch. I was so giddy by how perfect the lines were, both in keeping them the same as the book and in their delivery from the actors. This is not always possible, understandably, so to have moments like that, and so many of them, was a testimony to the hard work and collaboration between writer, director, and the main author, Suzanne Collins. As aforementioned, the books take place solely from Katniss's perspective, to avoid narration, but also to keep certain elements of the story and lore clear to a movie-only audience. The film writers had to add in some things. Most of these being scenes not involving Katniss at all. We got quite a few that gave us insight to Snow, Coin, and the district riots. And frankly, as someone who did read the books, I loved seeing these scenes. Since I know they worked so closely with Suzanne Collins, I imagine these scenes portray what she would have written them to be had she gone outside of Katniss's head. Longtime members of the Geekdom were probably just waiting for this one. My last thing, the biggest thing for me actually, the aspect that really tied the whole of the films together and made the atmosphere perfect, was of course the brilliant score composed by James Newton Howard. I get chills just thinking of the pieces he wrote for this series. If I had to narrow down the success of these films to two things, it would be casting and music. A third close would be the genius of how they translated the writing of the books to writing a screenplay, but anyway, moving on. Music can make or break any form of storytelling media, and James Newton Howard was integral to making these films amazing. I will never be able to emphasize just how important music is to me, to my soul. My passion has always been stories, especially dance, because of music. It's as if music lives in another realm far removed from our own. It's a language we can't quantify or specify, but everyone understands it. However, though we may all be able to understand it, it's a delicate art to be able to speak it. A good composer is everything. From beginning to end, James Newton Howard captured the essence and depth of each and every moment put on the screen. Music is as much a storyteller as the writers. They tell you what's happening on a deeper level and allow you to experience the emotions, becoming not just sympathetic but empathetic toward the moment and the characters. Without the music, the films would not have held up nearly as much, despite how much I loved the casting and writing choices. The music wasn't a cherry on top. Rather, it elevated the series as a cornerstone to everything good about these films. Were there mistakes in the films, mostly the first? Yes. Were there things changed from the books? Yes. But these were difficult books to bring to life. Difficult books to capture the essence, message, and horror of in a tasteful way. But films are different from books, and I, for one, am forever impressed with how well the film creators managed to do the books a large amount of justice. We don't see this happen too often, so I'm extremely grateful for it. Thank you all so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please consider sharing, joining the Geekdom by subscribing. I don't know. I have a playlist full of Hunger Games videos, and I talk about a bunch of other topics as well, other geeky, nerdy topics. Be sure to let me know in the comment section below what your favorite parts of the films were, especially if you're someone who read the books too. We all have our gripes. We all have the things we didn't like about the films, and they vary from person to person. But let's cut out some negativity for a little bit. You know, it's been a few years. We can stop the critiques now, I think. You know, I mean, I probably won't, but still. Let's leave a positive comment in the comment section below. Let me know your favorite parts. As always, massive shout out and thank you to each and every one of my patrons. You guys are amazing. And on that same token, I mentioned this in the last video, we are getting close to our monthly movie night, which will probably be during Thanksgiving break. So if you'd like to experience watching the Hunger Games, the first one, with me and a few really awesome people, be sure to check out patreon.com/thegeekapprentice and find the tier for monthly movie nights and see if you want to do it. I might also do a movie commentary too, and that's at a lower tier, so it's cheaper, but you know, I always have trouble plugging that. I feel weird about it. But anyway, that's all for today. Happy Hunger Games month, and thank you for watching.